sports betting. It's big business in South Africa. They sponsor our sporting teams. They advertise on our commercial radio stations because that's how they keep going, sustaining themselves by accepting advertising. And it is legal, like in other countries around the world, but it is diverting our society's hard-earned disposable income away from the vital cogs of our economy. This is something that Professor Johan Fourie of Stellenbosch University's LEAP lab, it's the Laboratory for the Economics of Africa's Past, writing in an opinion piece, noting that South Africans are on track to spending close to 130 trillion rand when it comes to sports betting this year. That's only June. Good morning, Johan. Really appreciate your time. What is quite concerning in your piece that you write on News 24, that 1 trillion rand, it's nearly a quarter of total household income in South Africa. 4.3 trillion rand, that's what households spend. 1 trillion goes to sports betting in this country so far in 2025.
Morning, Lester. Morning, listeners. Yes, I mean, there's a footnote there in that obviously people re-spend their winnings. So it's not entirely just a quarter of total income, but the disposable income is to give you a sense of just the size of this 1 trillion rand. It is an exorbitant amount of money that people are spending, and it's certainly something. I think the concerning thing is the growth. That it's 5 years ago it was like 50 billion, which was already quite a lot of money. But it's just like 20x basically in the last 5 years, which is enormous.
And it's not just good, clean fun. You write that almost half of bettors gamble to cover costs, household costs, things that you should be spending your money on, like school fees, rent. And also 70% of people who do bet are doing it to supplement household income. It shows, it indicates to me that we have a debt crisis in South Africa, and people are trying to fill that debt hole by betting away the money that they already have.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating area for research, and actually there's not a lot of it, but the little bit that there is kind of show that people are often unbanked, so they don't have access to debt facilities, and so they use basically sports betting as a way to get lump sum payments. So say you want to buy a TV, and you can't access actually large amounts of money to buy that. So now you sport bet, and of course, this is a negative interest rate, so you kind of lose money, but sometimes you win a bet, and that bet gives you enough to buy the TV. So it's also says something about the South African economy or the structure of the South African economy, that many people are just left outside of the banking environment, and so they have to, or they kind of feel that this is the only resort that they have to find these lump sum payments. And this is not true only for South Africa, it's actually all across Africa. The study that I referred to is all about Uganda. So, this is not just a South African issue.
Yeah. There have been attempts at interventions. We do have a remote gambling bill that is slowly making its way, firstly through public comment and then through more exploration within committee before it even gets close to even being considered as legislation. And I do understand that particularly digital innovation is miles ahead of any government regulation. Heck, it took 13 years since the introduction of Uber in South Africa before there was any legislation that governed e-hailing. I hope it doesn't take so long to try and bring in some sort of regulation when it comes to the sports betting industry, especially ones that's so easy and accessible. You don't have to go to a tote. Everything's on your phone already.
I think that's the thing, is that it's just the speed at which things are changing doesn't keep pace with the kind of regulation, really. That's we would probably see, I don't know, years again until this regulation is passed. And given the growth has slowed down, but that's not, really much a circus. I think last year it was like 40%, probably this year it's slightly less than 40%, but that's still, massive amounts of money that's going to betting. And I'm not sure that the regulations that we're talking about actually will do much to slow this down. I think we need kind of more urgent measures. And maybe it's not actually that we have to wait for government. Maybe it's something about us as a society, it's civil society that needs to intervene and say, maybe we should put pressure on these, sports personalities who promote this, the sports teams that we support, to stop accepting sponsorships. Of course, the sports industry rely on this. So,
And
it's a
and
very difficult issue.
and that is part of the double-edged sword. We have, for example, a Betway Premiership in South Africa
Mm,
that supports the local football industry. We know of our sports teams some have been looking for equity partners, some simply just can't get over an economic hurdle, having to rely on the sponsorship of betting
mm,
companies. And
mm,
all of that is seen by impressionable, particularly younger eyes.
mm.
The young people are looking at sports people to be role models, and on their chest, part of their social media is ABC betting company. Bet now for a quick win.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And I'm a big sports fan myself, so I'm conflicted, of course, in that I would want to see the sports industry doing quite well, and we love all South African sports teams, and we are actually doing quite well at the moment. So you do want to support that, but I think we need to recognize that there is a cost to that of sports betting, and of course, you know. One should keep in mind that these costs are not always visible, as visible as the sports that we watch. And this affects. I talk a lot about the economics, but of course this affects families. And I've had massive feedback. This is certainly the column that I've written with the most feedback of people
Yeah.
saying, my family has been devastated by this. Thank you for doing this. So that has been a bit of a
Yeah.
surprise, actually.
The gambling industry is one of the few ways in which provinces can generate income.
Mm,
They are licensed by provincial gambling and racing boards. Would it take some form of a simple legislative change, or maybe even a constitutional change, to get some of that regulation to go into a national government? Because the conversation, since we've had 1, 2, 3 budget attempts of why don't we classify gambling as a syntax, so at least there could be some public benefit to what is expected to exceed the 1 trillion rand on
mm,
betting this year, that we can recoup some of that, use it
mm.
for plans and operations of public good, roads, schools, hospitals,
Yeah.
paying for nurses, etc. Why would it be so difficult to regulate or bring gambling under a syntax basket that it then benefits the fiscus?
Yeah, I think, I mean, firstly, this is beyond my area of expertise, the legal aspects of it. So I should caution that. You're perfectly right that these are, these gambling boards. I also think it's important to recognize that gambling and betting is not the same thing, kind of legally, right? So, this is sports betting, but, there's something there to recognize. But I do know that the gambling boards, obviously, they want to attract these digital platforms, and you can basically be registered in, say, the Western Cape and then operate nationally. So there's actually a lot of incentive. There's competition between the different provinces to bring in these betting companies to register in their own province. So you can also see that that's a race to the bottom, right? You offer them as lucrative deals as possible. And so to some extent, you're right. Maybe this needs to be in some form put on a national radar, and to some extent, the kind of the tax, I would see a tax not as a way to earn revenue, but really as a way to disincentivize use. It's not really that we want to, make money from this. We, as a government, I think we should really see this as to stop people using this or at least reduce the excessive use of it. So again, I wouldn't argue that we should not have sports betting at all, but I do think, this growth is concerning, and I don't think we know enough about what its effects are. And so that's really what I would want to see more of is actually, given that it's only in the last 5 years, this massive growth, I think there needs to be a lot more, scholarship that needs to go into studying this effects.
Professor Johan Fourie, really appreciate your time. Economics professor at Stellenbosch University. Really great book that he has, among his others, but his latest, A Long Walk to Economic Freedom. Fantastic, fascinating insights into the South African economy. Do get your hands on it and read it.